Biden calls for immediate release of Nigerian President Bazoum. President Joe Biden on Thursday called for the immediate release of Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum in a written statement commemorating Niger's Independence Day, saying the U.S. stands with the people of Niger as the country faces a grave challenge to its democracy. This marks the first time Biden has commented on the situation in Niger since last week's military takeover. The Nigerian people have the right to choose their leaders. They have expressed their will through free and fair elections, and that must be respected, Biden said. Defending fundamental democratic values, and standing up for constitutional order, justice, and the right of peaceful assembly, are essential to the partnership between Niger and the United States. I call for President Bazoum and his family to be immediately released, and for the preservation of Niger's hard-earned democracy, he added. Biden's statement comes as the U.S. has engaged in intensive diplomatic efforts to restore democratically elected Bazoum to power. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke by phone Wednesday with Bazoum, who was detained last week, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said. The United States is dedicated to finding a peaceful resolution that ensures that Niger remains a strong partner in security and development in the region, Miller said. The U.S. has not formally decided if the situation should be designated as a coup, a move that would require the U.S. to cut foreign and military assistance to the Nigerian government. There is no time requirement for the U.S. to make such a designation. Amid the tension in the country, the State Department ordered the evacuation of non-emergency personnel and family members from Niger on Wednesday. On July 26, President Mohamed Bazoum was placed under house arrest amidst efforts to overthrow the democratically elected government of Niger. Subsequent events have severely limited flight options, the State Department said in an updated travel advisory. Given this development, on August 2, 2023, the department ordered the departure of non-emergency U.S. government employees and eligible family members from Embassy Niamey, it said. The U.S. Embassy in Niamey has temporarily reduced its personnel, suspended routine services, and is only able to provide emergency assistance to U.S. citizens in Niger. But the ordered departure does not mean that the U.S. is closing its embassy or evacuating all of its diplomats. Roughly 1,100 U.S. troops in the country were restricted to American military bases earlier this week but are not expected to leave the country at this point, according to U.S. officials.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Justin Trudeau begins a new chapter of his political life. There was a play written about Pierre Trudeau and Margaret Sinclair, Maggie and Pierre, a fantasy of love, politics, and the media, a one-woman play performed by Linda Griffiths. It premiered at Theatre Passé Muraille in Toronto in 1980, toured the country and then played for 5 nights at the historic Royal Alexandra Theatre 1981, while Pierre Trudeau was still in office. It was revived in 2018, 3 years after Pierre and Maggie's firstborn son, who is referenced by name in the play, became Prime Minister. I like to think of Maggie and Pierre as epic characters, Griffiths once explained. They are heroes in that they contain all the elements of humanity, magnified. There may never be another public coupling quite like Maggie and Pierre. Their eldest son doesn't have the cool mystique of his father. And the dissolution of Justin and Sophie's marriage has not, perhaps thankfully, been nearly as dramatic and tumultuous as that of Maggie and Pierre. But news of the Prime Minister's separation from his wife was not only the most read story at the 24newsread.blogspot.com yesterday, by far, it was also the most read story at the BBC. Both People magazine and TMZ covered the story and featured it prominently. In the United Kingdom, both The Telegraph and The Times put pictures of the Canadian Prime Minister and his estranged wife on the front page. The major papers in the United States might have had more room for the story if their former president had not just been indicted for trying to overthrow the country's democratic order. In a remarkable memo written shortly before the official separation of Pierre Trudeau and Margaret Sinclair, one of the Prime Minister's top advisors told Trudeau that his marriage was the topic at every dinner table in the country and will be for a while. As Griffiths said, their story has already been shared by the whole country, and actually, by a lot of the world as well. Something like that is true now of Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. In their own way, they are humanity, magnified. The thin line between the political and personal. If there is some tacit agreement that a politician's personal life is, to a great degree, off limits from public scrutiny, that a public official is entitled to some privacy, it is also understood that a politician must display some humanity, often by disclosing or displaying some parts of what might otherwise be considered their personal lives. Their spouses and children appear alongside them. They sit for interviews about their home life. They post pictures of their weekend activities. They write books about their upbringing. A story that is inspiring or relatable is retold as much as possible. A spouse who is a charismatic or enthusiastic presence on the campaign trail is commonly considered an asset. But these displays of humanity are not entirely cynical. Politics is a human enterprise. And it is neither surprising nor wrong if voters want to know not just what a politician would do, but who they are, even if it is necessary to question how much voters ever really know about who their leaders are. For Justin Trudeau, as always, there are additional layers. He and Sophie Gregoire Trudeau always seemed like enthusiastic participants in the mixing of personal and political. As Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau has also been exceedingly public, both professionally and personally. His fallibility and contradictions have been laid bare. His emotions too. He is a hugger and a crier. But for Trudeau, the personal, or, at least, great pieces of it, has always been political. His birth was national news. His parents' separation, 5.5 years later, was international news. In the years that followed there were more shared events: his youngest brother's death, his father's death, his own marriage, his mother's disclosure of mental illness, the birth of his own children. To that list is now added his separation, the first for a prime minister since his mother and father agreed to go their separate ways. His personal life is its own precedent. Will there be political consequences? It is almost impossible to know what, if anything, this will mean for him politically. It can seem crass to even speculate. This is, after all, a deeply human situation, with real impacts for real people. But it's also not hard to imagine that it could have political consequences, if only because of the apparent public appetite for the story. Readership for the report of their separation on Wednesday was exponentially higher by leaps and bounds than readership for the other major political news of the day, that the federal government is ahead of schedule on its plan to plant 2 billion trees over the next decade. Strictly speaking, the trees will probably end up having a greater impact on the future of the planet. But it's easy to see why the other story might generate more immediate interest. If the spouses of other party leaders seem particularly prominent during the next election, it will be tempting to wonder whether an implicit message is being sent. But the simplistic ideal of the nuclear family has been stretched and expanded over the last 50 years. There are likely few Canadians who haven't either experienced a separation themselves or know someone who has. There may yet be questions too about whether the stress in his personal life has somehow negatively impacted his performance of his official duties. Though the asking of that question would suggest we should more regularly ask political leaders about the potential stressors in their lives, including how well they're sleeping and eating. In case you were wondering, Trudeau is said to be very disciplined about both his sleep and his diet. This week's announcement will undoubtedly change something, however great or small, about the story of Trudeau's political life. Public interest may wane. But the fact of the separation will linger as context. Reporters will feel obligated to ask something whenever he next appears before cameras. He will be watched closely for a while now to see how he carries himself and whether he betrays any sign of strain. In that memo from 1977, Pierre Trudeau's advisor Jim Coutts commended him on the superb posture he adopted and stressed the importance of maintaining it. It is perhaps not the sort of note one would typically send to a boss who was going through a difficult time. But a reader can feel Coutts' sense of the stakes. In such moments, humanity is magnified and voters get to see how well the politician withstands the glare.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Labour's shared values with Democrats will aid UK-US trade deals, says Shadow Minister. Labour's ideological closeness to the Democrats puts the party in an ideal position to sign trade deals with the US should both parties win their elections next year, the Shadow Trade Secretary has said. Nick Thomas Simons told the 24newsread.blogspot.com he thought Labour's shared economic values with the Biden administration meant his party would have more success than the Conservative government has had in making trade agreements across a range of sectors. The comments, which come after Thomas Simons traveled to Washington in July, reflect a growing economic consensus between Labour and the Democrats, which shadow ministers hope to use to their advantage after 2024. We share the Biden administration's worker-centric trade policy, he said. The Biden administration will have a strong ally in a Labour government. I think it would be great to have those shared priorities across the Atlantic, whether on workers' rights, consumer protections, environmental protections, the Jobs First agenda. Together the two could be really powerful allies for those priorities across the world, especially when it comes to signing trade agreements. In Washington, Thomas Simons met Catherine Tai, the U.S. trade representative, to begin talks between the two parties on a potential US-UK digital trade deal. Labour officials hope such a deal would guarantee tariff-free transatlantic data flows, as well as lowering barriers for industries such as financial services and cybersecurity. The US and UK agreed last year to deepen trade ties, including harnessing the benefits of digital trade. Since then, however, talks on digital trade have slowed, in part because of resistance from Democrats in Congress who are concerned about passing a deal that would boost large technology companies. Thomas Simons did not go into detail about what Labour could offer beyond what the Conservative government has in order to complete a digital trade deal. But he said he believed his party's willingness to discuss enshrining labor and environmental protections in such deals would give it a better chance of success in agreeing them in the future. The Biden administration has used international agreements to broaden the scope of environmental regulations, such as the recent deal with the EU on sustainable steel and aluminium. Labor officials point to Thomas Simons's meeting with Tai as a sign that the Biden administration is taking their position seriously. The Shadow Trade Secretary believes a digital trade deal could pave the way to a series of other sector-specific deals, after it became clear the U.S. would not prioritize a more wide-ranging free trade agreement. Earlier this year the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and the U.S. President, Joe Biden, committed to sign a deal on critical minerals that would guarantee Britain access to materials such as cobalt, graphite, and lithium, which are used to make batteries. That agreement has not yet been formalized, however. Thomas Simons is at the forefront of a broader push by shadow ministers to integrate more closely with senior officials in the Democratic Party. His visit last month followed one earlier in the summer by Rachel Reeves, the shadow chancellor, who gave a speech comparing her vision of securenomics to what the administration calls bidnomics. The two philosophies call for the state to play a greater role in the economy, for example by investing in green technology or bolstering workers' rights in the face of technological change.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
TikTok starting up Australian technology lab following security risk concerns. TikTok has started a massive recruitment drive in Australia amidst concerns that the company poses serious espionage and data security risks. The China-based social media giant is currently advertising 47 positions across engineering, cybersecurity, and data analysis for their inner-city Sydney office. The recruitment drive, the company's first in the research and development space in Australia, comes as TikTok becomes one of the social media companies named by a parliamentary committee into foreign interference through social media as a potential national security risk. Chief among government concerns centered on how TikTok's parent company ByteDance was reportedly headquartered in China, meaning they were required to secretly cooperate with Chinese intelligence agencies under the country's security laws. In a statement to the 24newsread.blogspot.com, a TikTok spokesperson said, Australia has been chosen as the latest location for a TikTok product engineering hub. The move to further invest in the Australian market reflects its importance in the global TikTok ecosystem, they said. The spokesperson also said they were expecting to grow the team to more than 120 people in the coming 12 to 18 months. TikTok is reading the room in Canberra. Catherine Manstead, Executive Director of Cyber Intelligence and Public Policy at CyberCX, says the move is likely a reaction to concerns around how the company deals with Australians' data, and its links to the Chinese Communist Party. This recruitment drive is TikTok, in a sense, reading the political room, she told the 24newsread.blogspot.com. It recognizes that we now live in a world where governments and private citizens are rightly concerned about ownership structures of social media and who can access our data. I would imagine TikTok is attempting to show that there is a separation between its business in Australia and links back to the Chinese Communist Party. However, Ms. Manstead said a partial onshoring of technology development may not be enough to sway decision-makers in Canberra. All social media companies are increasingly on notice that they need to do more to demonstrate that they are protecting Australians, she said. Fergus Ryan, senior analyst at the International Cyber Policy Centre, said that as long as engineers in China can access Australians' data, it is at risk of being accessed and used by PRC People's Republic of China intelligence services. TikTok's plans to hire for R&D positions in Australia are unlikely to change this key fact, he added. Transparency expectations different in the West. Australian law requires social media companies to provide data to assist in law enforcement investigations. Statistics around these interactions are made public every 6 months, with recent results showing that TikTok sees far fewer data requests than its Western counterparts. TikTok receiving far less requests for data from Australian authorities. Self-reported statistics on data sharing requests for July-December 2022. When it came to the Chinese government, however, neither TikTok, Meta nor Google disclosed any data requests at all in the second half of last year. Ms. Manstead says this reflects the reality of the Chinese regime that the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government is, in general, a closed system that is not transparent. Western democracies have a level of transparency that they hold themselves to, she said. We're just seeing an example of that difference. TikTok disputes parliamentary committee findings. Last month, TikTok's Australian Director of Public Policy Ella Woods-Joyce appeared in front of the Parliamentary Committee into Foreign Interference through Social Media. When questioned on whether the company was based in China, Ms. Woods-Joyce answered she didn't know where the company's formal headquarters were. This led to Senator James Patterson accusing her of obfuscation. Your reluctance to acknowledge basic facts about the parent company with whom you are ultimately employed is not a promising start to your willingness to honestly answer these questions, the senator said in the hearing. It appears like obfuscation to me. The committee's final report recommended introducing new regulations to ensure all platforms operate under transparency requirements or be banned from use across the country. The report also stated that foreign interference was Australia's principal national security threat. Ms. Woods-Joyce responded to the report by saying we disagree with many of the characterizations and statements made regarding TikTok. We welcome the fact that the committee has not recommended a ban, she said. We are also encouraged that recommendations largely appear to apply equally to all platforms. TikTok remains committed to continuing an open and transparent dialogue with all levels of Australian government. A Department of Home Affairs spokesperson said it would not comment on the operation of a corporate entity within Australia or whether it would be accepting the committee's recommendations. The government will take the appropriate time to consider the report's findings and recommendations, they said.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Democracy for the first time in J&K, Modi takes a dig at the Congress Party. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday criticized the Congress Party, saying that the principal opposition party did not take any substantial step to empower Panchayati Raj institutions in India for decades. Addressing the two-day regional Panchayati Raj Council held in Haryana's Surajkund on Monday, Modi gave the example of Jammu and Kashmir, saying that democracy has been established in the Union territory at the ground level since the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019. During the Congress's regime, there were no concrete efforts made to strengthen Panchayati Raj institutions. Maximum work was limited to figures and documents. Jammu and Kashmir is the biggest example. In the year 2019, after Article 370 was abrogated, it was for the first time that elections were held there from the Gram Panchayat, village, level to the Zilla, district, level, in which, over 33,000 local public representatives have been elected, Modi said in a virtual address. He added, for the first time, democracy has been established on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir ceased to be a state and became two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh in October 2019, after Parliament revoked the special status under Article 370 on August 6, 2019. Attacking the Congress party, Modi said, "This is the reason why even after 7 decades of the country's independence, electricity couldn't reach over 18,000 villages across the country. It was due to the Congress and other parties with similar ideology and their corrupt leaders, who had made more than 16 crore rural houses a hub of adjustment." PM Modi emphasized that in the 25-year journey of the Amrit Kal, one must learn from past decades. The road to a developed India goes through Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities and through villages which are becoming modern, adding a new hope and energy is visible in the hinterland and in small towns, he said. Promoting the Vocal for Local campaign, he said, "Today has been a very important day in the history of freedom struggle. The Swadeshi movement started today itself. Every Panchayat member of BJP has to be vocal for local, promote local products." He urged party members to take the benefits of the Panchayat system to the last mile of society. "I would request all of you that you should go and stay at some small place in your area for 2 nights in a week, sit with the people there," Modi added, emphasizing that the Panchayati Raj system is a strong pillar of Indian democracy.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Public housing schemes to be adjusted, extra help for older workers with not enough CPF savings, PM Lee. Singapore will have to adjust its public housing schemes to keep them inclusive, as well as ensure that flats remain accessible and affordable, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said in his National Day message on Tuesday, August 8. Older workers who have not built up enough Central Provident Fund, CPF, savings for retirement could also do with extra help, Mr. Lee said, adding that he will speak about these issues at the National Day rally on August 20. As Singapore continues to develop more public housing, fewer undeveloped sites are left for new Housing and Development Board, HDB, estates, said the Prime Minister. Existing non-mature estates are also steadily maturing as transport links and amenities improve, he noted. So in time to come, more and more new HDB flats will be built in existing estates like here in Dawson. Such flats will naturally be in greater demand. Their launch prices and resale prices will reflect that, said Mr. Lee. His message was recorded at Sky Oasis at Dawson, a project launched in recent years in Queenstown, one of Singapore's oldest towns. Amid this changing landscape, the government must still ensure that public housing is accessible and affordable for Singaporeans of all income groups, and that housing schemes are fair and inclusive for all, Mr. Lee said. This is how we keep our national housing story going strong for current and future generations. This is my government's commitment to you, and we will deliver on it, he added. In his National Day message, the Prime Minister also noted Singapore's rapidly aging population. 1 in 4 Singaporeans will be senior citizens by 2030. One aspect of preparing for old age is CPF savings, and the system has been progressively enhanced to make sure people can save enough in their working years, said Mr. Lee. Lower-income workers also receive targeted assistance through initiatives like the Workfare Income Supplement as well as progressive wage schemes, he noted. But some older workers now in their 50s and early 60s still have not built up enough CPF savings for retirement, and can do with some extra help, said Mr. Lee. He also addressed the scandals that have plagued the ruling People's Action Party in recent weeks, reiterating that they would be dealt with properly and transparently. Let there be no doubt, my government is determined to keep our system free of corruption and wrongdoing. We will maintain our high standards of honesty, integrity, and propriety. Singaporeans have come to expect this of us, and so have our international partners, he said. This is how we can preserve, protect, and strengthen the trust that Singaporeans have in the government and in the Singapore system. Trust enabled Singapore to get through the 3-year COVID-19 pandemic, said Mr. Lee. Trust is what allows political leaders to work closely with Singaporeans to deliver a better life for all. And trust will enable us to move forward safely in a troubled world.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.